I think in the beginning stages, it was spend as much as you want, try it out. Let's just break things and do things with it. But I think as the price keeps going up, it's going to be, sometimes the token use as much as an engineer.
Okay, so hello and welcome. I'm Chris Scott, the founder of Anbaric. I'm very happy today to be joined by my friend Kyle Kolich from Lightspeed. So Kyle, if you wouldn't mind, would you just say hi, tell us how you got to where you are and what you do at Lightspeed?
All right. Thanks, Chris, for the introduction. Kyle Kolich. I run payments at Lightspeed Commerce. Lightspeed Commerce is a point-of-sale financial service company that's based in Montreal. We have about 150,000 merchants, and I run all the payment products there.
So you've worked in pretty big tech companies for a long time. You worked in the Valley. You're obviously pretty well read on the latest technology trends, and that of course includes AI. So tell us, what tools do you use in your day-to-day? What are the AI tools you lean on most?
Yeah, I think I kind of separate in the two different worlds. There's tools that I use to just help just be overall efficient in my day-to-day operation, day-to-day work. And then there's tools that we're using to help embed AI into our technology to kind of build a better experience for the merchant. So we talk a little bit about some of the tools I use on a day-to-day basis. As you know, I'm working at a payments company where I have to be 24 hours a day. We're a global company. I get incidents, I get issues from merchants, I get issues going on with my teams across the globe. I tend to want to know kind of what's up to date with everything. Now, before kind of the tools I had, I would go through all the Slacks, go through all the channels, go through my emails, kind of do the pre-read of the day in the morning, which was fine. But sometimes I missed things, or maybe I didn't quite get the summary I wanted. And so what I built out with using Cloud Code was ability to kind of scan all my Slacks, all the channels I'm in, all my ones that are direct messages to myself, all my emails, and kind of give me a summary of the day, kind of like a daily brief, just to get a sense of what happened since I was asleep, what was going on, what things needs my attention. And it was a pretty quick way of building that out, using Cloud Code locally on my desktop, created a Kyle's daily brief, talked the agent to build this out for me. And then it just gives me that, daily brief in the morning to tell me kind of what's going on.
Okay. So that's a pretty advanced power user use of AI, I'd say. So you're not using Claude to read out your emails directly. You use Claude to build a tool to go and summarize your emails, Slack, and all of that. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I have it where it kind of scans all that, all those messages, builds out a nice dashboard. It's hosted locally in my computer. I open up the dashboard, gives me the daily read. It gives me the summary of all my Slack channels, gives me a summary of my emails, all my important meetings. So I can just look at that, which helps during the day, right? So before I even, my commute to the office on the subway, I spin that thing up. I look at it. I can read kind of all my important messages. So when I get to the office, I kind of okay, I know what I need to focus on first. It was an incident in the morning. Incident happened. How do we triage that? There's a merchant that needed something from a payment application. How do I make sure the team's associated working on that? So that's kind of helped me start my day with that daily brief.
And you, I guess, mentioned it in your intro, but you're not a programmer, right? This is not something that you would have done pre-AI.
I would say I used to, in long time ago, programmer, right? Back in the way day. But no, I'm not, making my living off of writing code. So this was something where I could use a AI to put in what I want, talk them through kind of the iterations of it. I think that was kind of the nice part. The first version of it wasn't great. Didn't really tell me anything. So kind of iterate. So it was actually working kind of like with engineer and design, just kind of build out the product I need that I wanted, just with that back and forth iteration, which was I think kind of an exciting thing to do, where you could spin up something quickly. Oh, that's not great. Scrap it. Move on. Do something else. Okay, move this over. Move that over. Get tighter on that. Be concise on that summary, and move on. So that was kind of a fun process.
Nice. So this is like true bespoke one-to-one software, right?
That's right.
Built software only for you, and you don't ever intend to have anybody else use it. It's just what you want.
And I think that's where you're starting to see kind of some of that splintering off, right? They're going to see some that where people are building things, and I can talk a little bit about my journey with OpenClaw, and how I started using that kind of personal and a lot of bespoke stuff for me, but then thinking about what else it could do. But this particular example was just using it for, I just needed something done that I wanted to be, just to save time in my own working life, and this was something that I could just kind of just working for me. I'm not sure I would use it for others or give other people that. It's just, there's probably a lot of nuance to it, but building something just specifically for like my needs was why I did this.
So, okay, I'm really interested in this. If you needed a bit of software and you just went and built it, and it was a fun process and you got a result at the end that you quite liked, is there any need for any off-the-shelf software? And if so, like, what are the scenarios where you need off-the-shelf software instead of going, hey, I've got this other job to do, I'm going to get Claude Code to go and build me a solution?
Well, I think that's where you're getting the what's happening to the SaaS world and where is that going to go? And because you're on an AI podcast, what we say today will be completely different tomorrow. So it's hard to like predict the bullet, right? Because it's moving fast and so many different things. But to that point, what I'm seeing is, I think you're still going to need that application layer. I think there are things that, like, we built something internally with our product operations team to help pull out all our epics in Jira, and then be able to farm out, like, all right, here are all the features we have planned out. Here's our it will give us a visual of the roadmap. It will give us data on what's launching when. We can actually have a whole flow of sign-offs with legal, with design, with myself. So we built that software, but underneath it was still Jira, because the team uses Jira a lot. And so they use that for their epics, use that for development. So does it completely replace Jira? No. Maybe in the future, don't know. But right now, the source of record, we kind of build a tool above that application. So there's a bit of, so there's a bit of, how much does it cannibalize? How much do we support it? How much does it enhance? I don't think that's been quite figured out in the industry yet. But still, like, is Salesforce like going away? I don't know if that's going to happen. We still use Salesforce internally for tools, but things built on top of it to make Salesforce better, we can kind of start seeing that happen, and that's becoming more real. But a complete replacement of a big legacy system, I still don't know if that's there yet.
I suppose I'm interested in whether, I'm sure it's a combination of factors, but like, is Jira still there? Is Salesforce still there because it has some kind of like unique capability moat that AI can't replicate, or just because it's incumbent? And I would maybe contrast that with, like, okay, billing software, for example, or some kind of finance software, where maybe there are other reasons why you wouldn't put an AI generated piece of code in there without having any professional programmer like own that and take personal responsibility for it. So yeah, like, if you were a brand new startup, would you be using Jira? Would you be using Salesforce, or would you be vibe coding it on Claude?
I think that's where you're starting to see a shift of those startups, those early companies, probably not buying a lot of those tools. Maybe they are vibe coding their way to solve maybe a CRM issue, a marketing issue. I don't know, though. It's still early. Like, will they evolve and say, okay, that was great, but because, again, like a billing software, it's been doing this for a decade, has the kind of the backing, has understanding how accounting principles, built in the overall DNA of the software. Finance is a very important part. You can't kind of mess that up. You can't have hallucinations. You can't have, things just giving you the wrong data point. Will they migrate then into a, more, known SaaS company? Do they migrate into the Oracle? Do they eventually go into a QuickBook? That I don't know yet. I haven't, right now it's a little bit of, let's go fast and build things our own. So I don't know if there's a shift yet. Will they do that? Maybe, but I think you're right. There's a bit of, there is a bit of, knowledge of that legacy system. that
Yeah.
may not be easily replicated. And then once you kind of become more mature, like that maturity curve, does it then require then to migrate then into this new to the established player that's more verticalized and specialized in that space?
Right. And for a larger company, I guess you could argue they're paying to de-risk that space. Like, what's the point in saving your Salesforce license fee?
Right. But I think it's going to go the same model as where, build your own, like this whole mantra back in the day, build your own versus, buying SaaS. And a lot of companies built their own, and that was great. But then they built this whole legacy kind of junk that, didn't get as, wasn't as flexible, wasn't as able to scale. And then the cost of just maintaining it. I think one thing we're noticing, and I'm noticed in kind of my journey with AI, is the costs, where, you feel like, oh, I have a budget, I know how to do this. And then all of a sudden you don't pay attention to the token usage, and it, hits higher than you expected. And so there's going to be a balance of like, well, I'm paying all this for tokens to do all this AI work, which is actually more expensive than buying an off the shelf SaaS that does the job. I mean, will that actually come into play soon? I don't know if that's been felt out, but I think there's going to be, I think in the beginning stages, it was spend as much as you want, try it out. Let's just break things and do things with it. But I think as the price keeps going up, it's going to be, sometimes the token usage as much as an engineer in some cases. So when does that come back? There's a balance for that. And you just have everything, and plus your focus of your company. Do you want to be focused on building the infrastructure and being, supporting all your applications that were homegrown, or do you want to leverage another, company to do that, where you can focus on innovating your own product? So again, it goes back to the build versus buy dilemma that, history repeats itself, or what they say, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it does rhyme. You may be falling in that same kind of trap.
Yeah, look, I think that's really interesting. I want to dig into that in a second. But first, you've described Claude Code basically as an engineer a couple of times now, right? So you've said that it, like, building with Claude Code is, like talking to an engineer and saying, no, this was wrong. No, go fix this. Like, you're the PM, it's the engineer. It's just that you don't have any of the, I guess, guilt of distracting somebody from something else in their backlog. But you also just said, like, the token cost starts to ramp up towards the cost of actually hiring an engineer. And like, do you want to be maintaining this stuff as you move forward? So you're building a whole bunch of things that you need to then manage. So I guess my question is, like, do you prefer working with a human engineer, or do you prefer working with Claude Code?
Well, I think the that's a good question. I've worked with a lot of great engineers. I work with a lot of bad engineers. But there is a bit of what I like about, it's kind of old school, but when you work with an engineer in person, there is a collaboration back and forth, a human collaboration. And so, a lot of times what I find, and this is again a skill, you have to bring in your agent, but they'll be very agreeable with you and tend to not to push back. And sometimes you go knowing that, hey, maybe that's not a good idea, because I know an engineer pushed me back on this, but you didn't. But you're being very agreeable. And I think that's kind of missing from some of this. But I have noticed that sometimes it is too agreeable. And sometimes you do need that natural pushback and go, hey, you want to go fast? That's great. But, sometimes it makes sense to go slower to get things right in the data model and make sure you're using the right, indexing, make sure you're scaling it right. Is it multi-tenant? If you're thinking tenant, there's things that a human engineer would kind of push back on. And we're like, no, go. Because, product managers always want to release faster. While your coding agent will kind of go, yeah, we'll go fast. And so sometimes there's almost like this video of I think it's like two cats driving, and it's like one with the PMs in the side, and then the agents on the right side driving, and they're just like whipping back and forth and just like driving. Really, it's kind of like that if you let them just unleash, and you start like, whoa, we get slow down. That's talk about this, is to make sure we're thinking through, is it scalable? Is that API scalable? Do you even think about failovers? All these kind of things that When you have a human engineer, it's just you kind of take that for granted because they're going to be that's the whole point. You want that friction, and I think friction helps build good products. And if you have an engineer just saying yes to everything, you end up not getting kind of that sharper product that you want to bring to market.
Yeah, and maybe a part of that is the alignment between Anthropic or whoever the foundation model supplier is, and you is like it's kind of there, but fundamentally they make their money based upon the number of tokens that it sends back to you. So they're going to want you to dig yourself into a hole. They're going to want to be doing stuff for you. Like saying, no, this is a bad idea means that you don't spend those tokens. So make it.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a conflict of interest, right? There's a little bit of like, hey, are you sure you want me to do this? And do you want to do this? And it's an extra token. And like, you feel it's not, I get a sense it could start going more that where I'm down a rabbit hole of doing something because I think, oh yeah, they're agreeing with me. And also I burn so many freaking tokens that, I shouldn't swear. Sorry. Too many tokens. And my budget skyrocketed. And so I'm like, oh no, that's not good. And then the output was less than I wanted. So there is probably again, everything in the world, incentives drive everything. And if the incentive is more token use, then you're going to get, it optimized for spending tokens. Now it'll be interesting when you see some of these AI companies go with more of a outcome based or a task based pricing system. That might help curb some of that. But right now it's you get subscription and then you get usage, and it's going to gear towards optimizing that as much as possible.
Do you think there's any chance they will move to an outcome-based pricing?
The problem is the money's so good. I mean, you saw Anthropic. It's like it's billions of dollars in revenue. I mean, they hit fastest to was it 30 billion than anybody. I mean, it's just too much money, and so it's risky then to go. Should we do an outcome-based model? Now, eventually, I think it will. I think what's going to happen again. I think the mentality of it is people are like, we don't want to be left behind. Let's just spend our money. Let's just see what we could do with this technology, get efficiency, see how we can get everyone to be a 10x, 100x person. From engineer, product, design. There is no budget. Well, I shouldn't say no budget, but there's a bit of error on the budget. I think once you start seeing, okay, you did all these, spend all these tokens, but what's the outcome? And the outcome was, it wasn't that great, or it didn't really move the own business. It didn't impact the revenue of your company. It didn't, really save on OPEX savings. It did, whatever the metric you're using for success on these, and the outcome is the same, but then the prices go up. Then I think there's gonna be some kind of pushback. And then these companies got to think about, all right, how do I then price this properly? Maybe per token isn't the best bet here. Maybe we do outcome based, maybe per pull request, PR, whatever makes sense for maybe the vertical, and then have kind of strict guidelines of what that outcome means, where you can say, okay, this was truly the outcome we wanted, and then here's the price for it. So I don't think we're there yet because the money's still just flowing, but I think once people start going, wow, we're spending a lot of money on this stuff, and the ROI is not there or hard to measure, some pullback might happen.
I mean, as you say, the incentives are going to drive the behavior. And so maybe it just takes one of these foundation models to switch their pricing to something outcome based, and it could flip the market quite a lot. Okay. One other thing that, reading between the lines here, again, you talked about like a to and fro with the agent to go and build these things with Claude Code or whatever it is. Version 1 wasn't very good. Version 2 is a bit better. You fix things. You talked about like the cost of maintaining this. I think whether you want to maintain these things going forwards, if that's a false economy. I think that it's like quite easy if your only exposure is listening to, press releases from, I keep picking on Anthropic, but whatever Anthropic, let's say. I mean, I use Claude as well, of course.
You're developers. They went all in on developers and coding. They were behind. That was crazy. I mean, they were behind, and OpenAI had the advantage, but they picked people like you and transformed their lives.
But here's the thing, right? There are a bunch of folks who are not engineers who I think have built this impression that building software is basically free when you use coding agents. Right. You have 90%, 80% of all code is written by AI quotes, which, come out all the time and you change around and whatever else. You have like startups where you have agents which are assembled to look a bit like a human workforce with product managers and, all the different roles you might need. And like you talk to people who are not programmers who work in whatever, like some business or another. And quite a lot of them have this idea that no, the cost is going to be nothing. I'm just going to like one shot put a prompt in for the thing I want and it's going to come out perfect. And they might say, maybe we're not there yet, but we're on a journey to get there. Do you buy that? Like, is that the world now? I think it's not from what you said, but do you buy that we would get there?
I mean, look, maybe I've been in the payment space for a long time. I always know it's like more hands on the flow. You're going to lose your take rate, right? There, you're going to lose your profit. The more things you throw in there, there's this cost, right? So the more you get, I think that's where I was kind of leaning towards. Like, more you add these models into your business, which is great. I mean, I think it makes sense. But if you don't kind of think about the costs, you can get surprised and you start seeing some of this stuff kind of erode there. And I think for the non-technical person, there's probably been of maybe I not speak for all of them, but I think there was always this aura of engineers that they were the untouchable people within the organization. And they once they put their headphones on, it's 3 hours, which makes sense. You can't context switch. So there's a reason why the headphones on, but the mocking of engineers don't bother them, and the headphone thing. And so I think there was a little human animosity a little bit towards that. And like, oh, there's now an AI agent I can talk to. They can code just as good as John over here and doesn't give me the attitude. Oh, this is great. Yeah. I want to use this person. And like, I'm going to riff with them and build things. And it's exciting. I'm like, I went all in with some of these. I, was building stuff just to see what it's like. And, I could tell you, my open claw, and I got that on my desktop. And I said, I want this on, 24 hours a day. So I put on a virtual machine. So now I'm like pretending I'm like spinning up a virtual memory and figuring out how to create firewalls. And so it's kind of neat to kind of do the real techie stuff. But I think there was but it hits you and like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't have this port open. That port was wrong. And then that didn't work. And then also my code didn't understand what's going on. And so there is no free. I think the sentiment of this is there's a cost to this, but there's also you have to understand the technology. You have to understand what it's actually doing, why it's working the way it is, play around with the tools to get more comfortable with it. It's not something you can just spin up and like, all right, I just sign up for Pro. I can now start building my own stuff. Yeah, you can, but don't like say everything else gets thrown out and there's kind of a false sense of security in it because again, the models keep changing so fast. You don't know. I think one thing I liked about OpenClaw was that it was open source, so you felt like a little bit of at the time kind of like this party was on its own. So I can kind of try out like Codex and Claude and like Gemini and kind of have fallbacks and kind of see how it all works. And I think that really gets you a better understanding of the technology. And so then I think when that happens is that less of, I think there's going to be a moment where this isn't just free and it's just going to make everything, beautiful. There's going to be, it's going to be a road to get there. And I think it's a bit of, you still have to do the work. The work is still the work, understanding how the technology works and understand how you add this into your, again, like that flow of your transactions. There's going to be a cost. There's a bit of maintenance of it, model switching, optimizing for the right one. It's still not, again, I think to the point of it's free and easy and everything will be transformed tomorrow. There's going to be things that need to be done. The work needs to be done.
Okay. Well, so maybe that brings us nicely on to, so you mentioned that you're an OpenClaw user. So far, we've been talking about building what I would maybe classify as like legacy software using AI. Right, using this newfangled AI thing to go and build software that looks exactly like it did 10 years ago. And And as you've identified, that still has a lot of costs. It's still like maybe cheaper, but not cheap. It's maybe democratized, but not completely democratized. It maybe still has maintenance issues and stuff like that. Perhaps none of that is relevant because roll forward a year or however many years or months or minutes, nobody uses any of that because anything you might want to do, you do via agents and language interfaces, whether it's voice or typed. So maybe we can start with, tell us a little about your experience with OpenClaw and how you use it. And then I'd like us to loop back around to, is that the replacement for everything?
So, yeah, I don't know yet. I mean, I think so with OpenClaw, I was pretty excited that there's an open source kind of orchestration layer that I could kind of leverage. And I felt, again, at the time, it wasn't heavily influenced by the other models. So I felt like I could plug them in, have a primary agent, secondary agent, backup agents that all kind of work together. And I didn't go the route of I did the first route like, well, let me see if I can just put it on my desktop and do like the emails people talk about and just like the a little bit of like what I talked about in the beginning, just kind of your day, and then maybe from there do actions from that. And that was kind of the evolution I was thinking about doing. Okay, I have my daily snapshot. Maybe I can then put OpenClaw on top of that to then send out emails or send out requests or respond to that Slack. I didn't get to that point because maybe that's a miss in my point, but at the time I was like, it's not really want to relinquish the control. So I pivoted and said, all right, let me see what else I can do with OpenClaw and see like that. Like, can I make this person like my true engineer counterpart, where I can have them on a virtual machine that's not on my desktop. I have them have their own environment. They're not doing emails. They're kind of just spinning up some ideas in tech, building out a couple of databases, kind of leverage any kind of agent I want. Like you do Codex, you can do any Anthropic models, you can do Gemini. I just had them all kind of install and set up, and that's why I was kind of playing around with it. Like, can we build out some software ideas and have this agent kind of, all right, you're going to spin up an agent that's going to do my UI work, and then an agent's going to do database. You can do an agent who's going to do like the APIs and kind of work together to build out that. And I was kind of getting thinking, well, whatever this is going to build, you're right. Is it moving away from a UI focused software, but more like be agentic first? Be at the end of the day, the idea was that I was trying to figure out pricing. So a big problem I have is how do I price properly to the right customers? And it's not just a data problem; it's also a human problem, because the data can say, if I increase price by 1%, I'm going to make this much revenue. But what's my churn? Well, what's the threshold churn? And that's a little bit of like, where's that a human element of it? So I was trying to build a model where it took the data, be able to figure out what the pricing change would be, but also kind of the human emotional impact of increasing price. And how do I build like the model to think that way? So when I pull it all together, I could say, well, if I increase the price by 2%, I'll make this much revenue, but the churn is going to be significant. It's just not just going to be blanket, it's just a 10% churn. It's going to say, okay, based on these customers, based on what the churn's going to be this. And so the interaction I was having with the UI would be actually less and less. It would become more minimalized. So it's kind of like you said, it's like going away from if I built this 10 years ago, it'd be very dashboard heavy and workflow heavily and do more of a chat interface. All right, upload the pricing, a data sheet of all the merchants I have and customers I have and pricing I have. Here's a model I have of those kind of customers, the type of kind of customers to kind of build out the mentality of like, okay, these are kind of the customers that would churn if the price goes up. So I built it all in together. But then the interface was very, again, maybe the agent just talks to another agent. Right? There's more of a, this talks to the billing agent to then bill these customers at this price. Or this agent talks to the e-commerce site to update the price and then see the impact. So you kind of be like building a world where the software is less of my interface was more of a chat or a UI dashboard of kind of what the impact was, but the actual work was being done by the agent. So I think that is where it's starting to feel real about how that works. I haven't quite seen that totally in practice yet, where it's like really taking on all those responsibilities, but I could see that it did make my job easier, because I just like, I outcome I want. I want to increase prices. I want to make revenue. I want to lose churn. Outcome's clear. How do I use the agents to drive to that outcome that I'm working towards, and having them work together to kind of solve that problem? So it's starting to feel that's the direction. And from the UI standpoint, it becomes more of a just dashboard, little knowledge, but kind of more of a interface of seeing how things are going. Give me the churn results. One was I increase it by 3%, and then redo the whole thing again.
Right.
So,
right. I mean, look, if you're working with a CRM in 2025, a CRM would clearly have been a graphical user interface where you see tables of accounts and tables of opportunities, and you can click in on them and see information and stuff like that. I think it feels hard for me to believe that, maybe in 2027, it would look like that. It's going to be hey, whatever agent, what are my active opportunities that I need to go and chase down? And it'll say, here you go, I'm going to email them, and you're kind of done, right? And so is that going to happen everywhere? Like, is the whole way that we interact with the internet, digital stuff, is it going to stop being the web? Is it going to stop being browsers and visual and just move to talking to things? Or are there cases where that just doesn't cut it?
I mean, I think there's something we're seeing in our industry is that, like, for example, my youngest son broke my TV, right? So just smashed my TV. So I had to buy a new one. Broke my TV in the living room. Was playing baseball, and the bat broke the TV. And so I had to buy a new TV. And I said, well, I don't want to go through the process of going web, shopping. I kind of let this at the time ChatGPT do it. I was like, here's my specs. Find me the right price. See what the right, give me the best deal. I let them do it. Now I did the final step, purchasing, but they did all the legwork. It really kind of, there's a point where it could probably do the whole transaction. Give them my credit card, it would pay for everything. But what we're also noticing too is that on some aspects on the purchasing price. So I think there's probably a bit where, is the shopping going away? E-commerce might be more maybe it becomes more your agent buys for you, but people are people, and so I think they still crave the in-person interaction. And so what we've noticed is a lot of merchants are now kind of leaning into, all right, building that experience when you walk into the store. So when you walk in, now the TV wasn't a good example, but when there's a liquor store by my house, right? I go in that liquor store, they know me. I've been there for a while. They create an experience. They give me information of what wines are coming out, tastings. They have my payment methods on file. I can just grab a few bottles. Is this okay, Lenny? Lenny goes, fine. I walk out. Makes the kind of frictionless in-person more enjoyable. I have a relationship with Lenny. Lenny has a relationship with me. And that brings joy because I'm having that in-person shopping experience. Now, could I do that online? Yeah. I could probably get the same bottle, maybe find it cheaper, but having that experience in shopping, I think, will be where it will pivot in some aspects, where, again, you're going to have your agent kind of doing some of the things that tactically are, I need a pair of, dishwashing soap, whatever, just do it and then just come back with a bright price. But some experiences, I think, will be even more in person and even more kind of special in these stores, because I think people do crave that in-person interaction that I think it will completely gone away with agentic shopping.
Oh, okay. So let me just try and check some boxes where we're up to now. If you were say a product professional in a software company, kind of similar to your role, maybe you have no programming experience. Should everybody be building software today? Should everybody be building agents today? Is it dead easy? Are there things that they, would just if somebody hasn't done this now, is your advice to them, get on with it, go do this, go build something?
I think it is. I think you should know the trend of what's going on. I mean, I remember in the kind of give an example of these shifts. So from the on-prem world to the SaaS world. And I used to do, it's going to date me, but I used to work with like Siebel CRM. And I went from Siebel CRM to Salesforce.com. And so the shift in how that technology worked, played around with Salesforce, played around creating fields and creating opportunity records and just click without doing a whole kind of config file and a lot of back-end work just to get it to work. but I could just point,
Mhm.
click, and solve visuals that I wanted. I think that was important because then you can understand how the tech was evolving and working. And the same thing with AI. I think you just need to. I don't think you're late in the game. I think anyone can just spin things up, play around with it, understand how it works, and learn
Mhm.
the way you want to learn. But I think not paying attention to it is a problem. I think you do just need to understand how they work, what's going on. Now, can you be an expert? I don't know how anyone can be an expert. It's unless you work there or you're spending all your time in it. I think it moves so fast that whatever you learn being cutting edge will be different. But the point is understanding how it all works is important. I think you can't just not do it. But being an
And
expert, I
would
think, will change
you,
every minute.
right. Would you recommend just today, right now, this minute, that somebody who hasn't done it before, do they jump in and use Claude Code to build a like traditional app? Or are they going to try and create some kind of like agent, maybe using OpenClaw, maybe using something else, CoWork? Like, what would be the first port of call for you?
I think you treat it like how you treat building product. You find a problem that you have, and then see if you could build something. How would you solve it? So, a good example, like I was thinking about this morning. My kids play baseball. I got to coordinate all of the. They both play in two different teams, two different ages. I got to coordinate who they're playing with, where they are, what times, and I have one car. So I live in the city of New York. One car is about as good as I want. I don't want to get another car. So how do I optimize that and schedule it? So I'm going to build something that kind of helps me communicate with my wife and myself. The schedule. How do we support? How do we go to the practices? How do we make sure we don't practice? There's a chain of people we can reach out to. So it's solving a problem. So I think what really, if you go at it with just like I just want to play around with it, it's fine. Again, any training is
Yeah.
great. Anything is doing one step is better than no steps. But I think if you have some kind of problem in your life that you're like, I really want to see if I can make that easier with technology,
But
that makes
look, I
yeah.
think that's a really good example because, right, that's your like classic one-to-one bespoke software, right? The family Kyle baseball planning thing,
Mhm.
right? But it could fundamentally be solved as an agent
Mhm.
where you communicate with it and it sends you text messages and tells you, hey, have you left yet? You have to go. Or it could be built as traditional software where you like log in and see all the stuff you got to do. So I think my question to you is like you've built both of those things as a like primarily non-technical user. So like is one of them way harder than the other? Like would you advise people to take their first step in one route or actually these days just pick the one you prefer and go with it?
I think the Asian one, I think people can relate to because it's essentially you're kind of building it's almost like you're onboarding someone into your company or you're hiring a new person. So it's the same kind of mentality. And I think once you get that agent figured out of how you can leverage it and you treat him like a person, like, I know this sounds kind of weird, but you're like, how do I get this person up to speed? How do I make sure they,
Yeah.
have memory about me? How do I tell them what they need to do? I think that's
Yeah.
a more natural interface, to be honest with you, than kind of even the building like the product or login way. Because your product login way is again, we built a lot of software that way, but this particular problem I'm trying to solve is better just to like, I'm going to talk to Anton, my agent, and say, okay, Anton,
Right.
what's our schedule like? How do I make sure that the kids get to the practice this week? Oh, it's raining. So,
So your recommendation is download OpenClaw, get your hands dirty.
well, I see that. I don't know that I'm not going to say because again, that changes every day. Because I would say OpenClaw was amazing when I could use the Anthropic Pro, and they were killing me on the usage. But now I'm like, oh, it's a little bit. It's still interesting, but that one's actually harder to set up. You do have to have some, and it's very open. So there's some security things you need to be careful with. So maybe if you've never done any technology before, I don't know if I would do OpenClaw just to try out. I mean, I think Claude's come out with similar products that are a little more, control based. I think again, OpenAI will come up. I think with Spud coming up. They're all coming up with something like to be like an open claw, which I think will help. Now, what I don't understand how they're going to handle what I like about it was the kind of agnostic orchestrator with the models and how they can handle that. Because then if you're just tied to one, you kind of lose a little bit of the special sauce of kind of managing multiple ones and seeing which one can help you solve your task. But maybe that's advanced, your phase 2 model, but maybe phase 1 just do the one that's local to your computer, that's known company, maybe not open source at the moment, just so you can get a feel for how it works, and then dabble into open source and try things out.
Right. Okay. So co-work would be a good place to start.
I think co-work's a good place to start. Yeah, I mean, I think you can get a decent plan. They have ways now to prevent overusage, so you can put in a certain usage tolerance, and you don't have to auto refill, or you could. And I think if you do that, it gives you errors. I think with what we'll call it DIN, so I hit the limit. But they put a little more precautions in it, so you don't get like a $1,000 bill if you throttle the tokens and APIs too much. So there's ways to kind of keep it time box, and I think that's going to be important. Like, one of the things I'm when I was talking about building something, I'm looking at how do I build it as cheap as possible. Here's my budget, like $100 a month, just to see what needs to be done and how bad it gets. If I go too low, my fallback is the fallback of a fallback, and I'm all of a sudden in an open source LLM that isn't great. So how badly does it impact it? So I like doing that just to keep the price in. But there are ways to do it where you're not worrying about a huge expensive bill at the end of the day.
Okay. You talked a little while back about your Jira, like the stuff you built on top of Jira. I think maybe release tracking or something like this.
Yeah, it was. The problem we were trying to solve was, being in, financial service applications. There's a lot of, legal reviews, compliance reviews, design reviews. Just a lot of just coverage to make sure whatever we release isn't going to hurt customers and merchants and whatnot. So there was a bit of rigor on our features that when they roll out, we have to have certain reviews and have all the information there for someone to review it, the PRDs, the design, the mock-ups, the vibe code, view of it, whatever it is, all in one place, and then allowed for kind of a smooth way of just updating the approval process, but also showcasing that it's signed off, it's ready, it's launched, and then has a nice view of our roadmap and what's been launched from the previous and what's in the future. Right. So it kind of solved the problem we were having, just like product operations impact with that.
Yeah. So you've moved some tasks from, I guess, things that were done manually to things that are now done through either tools that were built by AI or by AI agents.
That's right. Yeah. It was all done in Google Sheets, and it was done manual email, Slack updates.
So one thing that I think about here is this task has an outcome, and it's quite likely that the quality of the outcome is just as good, right? You've used AI now and replaced some tasks that people did, and the outcome is just as good. But at the end of the task, maybe arguably the person isn't as good. So the human who did those tasks before was constantly refining their model of the world, getting to understand the nuances and the details of Lightspeed's product, their customers, the complaints that have come in, and other bits of feedback, positive and negative. Do you worry that by bringing more and more automation in, you're losing knowledge in the human workforce? Or does that not matter anymore? You don't need it anymore?
That's a good point. I think for this task, I think it helped to save time of chasing things down, consolidation and visualization, so there was a clear outcome. I think what I concern about is the evolution of this, probably longer conversation, the evolution of the PRD, where you can create a PRD quickly and with AI, but if you don't do the work, and the work's to work with PMs, understanding the customer problem, talking to the customers, seeing being because the one thing, the advantage of a product manager is they are the source of truth of the pain of the customer, and they know it better than anyone in the organization. That's kind of I think the most effective product managers are the ones that They know their persona, they know their customer, they know the pain, they know what they're going with, and they're solving that pain. If you
Yeah, I
outsource
look
more of
at
that, you do kind of lose a little bit of that connectivity. Now, if you use it to kind of enhance that and speed up and become, instead of a PRD taking a long time, you have all the information now, just making it real in a doc faster, or GitHub repository, however you want to structure your PRD these days, is good. But if you have it where you just let it do everything for you, I think you do lose that understanding of
I
the product.
think the PRD is a really great example of where, for me, the outcome, the output of a PRD is worth so much less than the process of building it.
Mm-hmm.
Because a PRD is about, have you really deeply thought about this? And if you let an AI do it, you don't ever do that thinking. You don't see what the alternatives were. And I do worry that people lose some of their own mental model of the world if they're relying entirely on an AI model of the world.
I think the risk is real there. I think the risk is that if you do that too much, then you don't really see the reality, and then it's almost like the people who sometimes there's an old saying, I think Jeff Bezos said, like, you can give me all the data in the world, but the anecdotes tend to be even more powerful. Like, understanding the story behind the data tends to be the most powerful part of it.
Yeah.
If you do the PRD without understanding that anecdote, the story of that customer, your product then doesn't have that wow factor.
Look, I know that we're out of time. I could go on for a lot longer about this. Can I just leave you with one very, very quick question you can answer in one sentence? We're obviously on some kind of technology maturity curve for AI. Do you think we're in the final form or somewhere near the beginning?
So I don't think we're in the early stages. I don't think we're in the toy stage. I think we are. I think the models are getting more useful. The work's getting a little bit easier to do the writing, the coding, analysis. I think we're so early. I don't think we've gotten to the full path there yet. I think I think if we should probably do a follow up, and we should probably do it like 3 months, and it'd be a completely different story. But I do think this is an exciting journey. I think there's going to be a lot of like great things that come out of it. There's some things we just have to kind of navigate it, but I think we're still very early in this journey.
Okay. Right. Thank you ever so much. Really appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.